Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer podcast. I'm Richard, your host, and I'm also joined by Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
Hello.
And today we are joined by Mellissa Seaman, and she is her company is Channel Your Genius. She is a intuitive business strategist and super interesting. Melissa was a Stanford educated business lawyer until her intuitive abilities awakened around the year 2000 when she gave birth to her daughter. And now she bridges the world of business strategy and intuitive intelligence. So she's kind of our kind of people, our kind of tribe. And she helps leaders learn how to channel their genius, to create on demand, to stay in their flow state, and to create lucrative businesses that follow their soul's calling. And might add, probably change the world and change consciousness and help the world at this important time.
Yeah.
um, and so today we're going to be talking about Spiritpreneur Secrets for being valued and charging what you're worth. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Kylie. I'm so psyched to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's such important work you're doing, and it sounds like you had this path that was being a business lawyer, and then at some point, probably everything changed. Can you
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
share a little bit of your backstory about how this new world developed and how it kind of led to your current work?
Yeah, totally. It was an unplanned change. I mean, I was pretty happy as a lawyer. I had my big house and my couple of cars and I was pregnant with my second baby, and I really had kind of checked all the boxes that I had on my list of where I should be at that point in my life. And this was the year 2000. And I went into labor with my second child, Clarice. And that labor wasn't laborious. It was delightful and positive and even pleasurable. And then I had a little baby, my second baby. And after that experience of that luxurious birth, I suddenly could hear messages. I could see energy, layers of energy that I couldn't see before. I was suddenly really quite psychic. And that was awkward because I hadn't believed in that. I hadn't believed in that stuff. So I had always been a person of faith. I'd always been close to God, and I'd always been intuitive and that I could hear God speaking to me, in gentle, lucid tones. But this was like, bah, 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 bah. Suddenly I'm hearing messages for other people, and I'm seeing mysteries that, I hadn't really even believed are possible before. So I'd like to say, oh, it was a magnificent awakening, blah, blah, blah. But actually, it was quite tumultuous and shocking and sometimes scary. It wasn't scary inside myself, because inside myself, I was just like, oh, look at that. God's way more complicated than I thought. Oh, that figures. Go on, God. And oh, of course we can affect our energies and each other. And oh, of course we're souls having a human experience. Oh, this all makes sense to me personally inside my body. But the way it was received, in my church community, by my parents, nobody could understand what the heck was going on with me. And so it really shook my world to the core. Plus, it was such a big right brain awakening somehow that I couldn't do contracts law, which is what I was doing at the time. I'd created a nice little tidy law practice in my home while I was raising my babies, working with women, business owners, doing contracts and negotiations and stuff like that. And suddenly my brain was like, the words just danced on the page. I couldn't do the same work anymore. So it was a real trip. It took me years to get my feet on the ground with it and to put my intuitive gifts to work for myself and my clients, and to really integrate that experience.
I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious at the time, like how like if somebody else was going through their own like kind of crisis or awakening or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, like, and you were to say, look, here are a few tips if you're going through this kind of like cocoon transformational transcendent kind of state, what kind of got you through? Was it finding a mentor or reading a book, or did you have an inner guide that helped you? I'm kind of curious what helped you, and what would you advise other people to do if they were going through a similar kind of massive life transformation?
Yeah, great question. In fact, I've spent the last 20 years and more answering that question, and I have a whole system for that now where I've helped thousands and thousands of people to walk through this sort of process with a little more support and clarity, and what I've learned is a couple of tips, I guess. I'll give you a couple hot tips because that's what you really asked for is don't throw away your logical mind in how you work with spirit. So I feel like my sort of saving grace as I walked through this transformation was that I had been trained as a lawyer. So when I suddenly could see all these reams of spirit and guides and interdimensional friends and whatever the hell else other kind of, metaphors we use to describe spirit, which is of course way too big for us to encapsulate anyways, I put them on teams. I'm like, okay, you guys are help me with my body. You go sit over here together, Oh, you're telling me the future. I don't actually want to know the future unless it's going to help me or someone who's asked me to help. So you go sit over here and here's our protocols now for tapping that information. And so I organized all that stuff for myself and created a lot of boundaries and systems and protocols so that I can tap that huge wisdom and healing, but only in ways that work for me pragmatically here in this lifetime on this planet right now. So that's like the big tip. And then of course, now I have systems to show people how to do that and to help them set it up in their own way, because all those systems need to be really personalized, and nobody else can tell you how to talk to God. You got to create your own through lines for that stuff. And so that's part of what I do is I help people create those systems. Another big tip just to keep in mind is just because you can now do extraordinarily special things, don't get too hot on yourself. I mean, I think most of the drama that happened to me during that time period is because I got bristly. I got sort of, when my parents were like, oh, we're concerned about you and you're talking to invisible friends and, you're saying that you're effectuating healings, that's we're concerned about that. Instead of softening and going, yeah, I can understand how that would be concerning. Like, what the hell just happened to this normal person? I got kind of, spiritually arrogant. Well, you can't see it because you haven't had the awakening, and like I went into that whole thing, and now I'm like, oh, face palm. That's embarrassing that I too went through that period. But, we all have these gifts. We all have our own ways of talking to the invisible world and relating with spirit. And we're not all supposed to see as much as I was given to see. We're not all supposed to do that. And it doesn't make you better just because you know a few, what my Shima Maria calls shamanic party tricks. She's like, that doesn't make you better than everybody else. And it doesn't make you worse. It's just a different way to be human. Yeah.
I love that. And that was beautiful, and so much in there too. I am curious. So you have this awakening, you go through the intensity of what that means. You feel the alienation, your family thinks you're crazy, and you still have that lawyer brain intact. And so you're able to say there's a system or a way to go through what I just went through. Can you share a little bit about it? I don't expect you to give the whole system, but I think a lot of people would find it really counterintuitive that there's this spiritual opening and there's systemization to it, if that makes sense.
I know, and that's my favorite part is that this intersection between the wide mystic reality of meaning and heart and love and ultimate purpose, and our pragmatic, clear, brilliant, strategic minds that know how to solve real problems in the real world. Like, can we please have both worlds? And so the system, I want to speak to the largest level of that system. And I also want to give credit to my Native American teacher, Maria Yesbrew, who's the ceremonialist for the Tilstayan people, who has been with me really after I woke up to this crazy stuff. I prayed so hard, like, whoa, I need to get connected with some mentors or people who know what the heck this stuff is that can help me hold this in integrity. And Maria is someone who showed up in my life during that first year and basically took me under her wing, adopted me, and showed me her people's ways that they'd been doing for thousands of years. But she also expressed to me, hey, this time period between 2000 and 2012, our prophecies say this is a time of huge change. And so she's like, I'm going to teach you a lot of the ceremonies, but after 2012, all the ceremonies have to be renewed because the grid of the planet will shift. So she's like, that's why I want to hang out, is because you're a clear modern channel. Let's work together and see how are these things supposed to shift after 2012, to which I replied, holy crap, no pressure, lady. But, she and I have been close for over 20 years now. And she really showed me the pathways of what she describes as like the wheel of life, the medicine wheel, which is a path cosmology, which is represented by a spiral. And ever since she showed me how our life paths, the initiations, the natural life passages that every single one of us go through the span of our lives, these are the same passages that we all walk through to upgrade us along the path of life. And we're all traveling this spiral path together. And when we get to the middle of each spiral, boink, we like upgrade to the next level and we do it again. And so when I say there's a system, it's the same spiraling pathway that we are going on through life, starting with our conception and then our birth and then our childhood initiations and then our puberty initiation and then our purpose initiations, which most of us really attack by doing business in the modern world. That's really just a purpose initiation. And then the wisdom initiation of elderhood and the final initiation of death. And each one of these 9 life initiations is anchored by a time in life, kind of, that we all walk through. But we're also being taken through it in different ways. Like many of us have been initiated by death, for example, by either facing our own death through a serious illness or a near-death experience, or by having someone we really love die on us, and we get a piece of that death initiation that we might think of as something that would always happen at death. No, we are constantly walking the spiral. And so it's like, it's a system, and it's not a linear path. It's a spiraling, multi-dimensioned path that we're all on. And when we become aware of it and we track it and we enter into these initiations that life keeps handing us and our relationships keep handing us and our work keeps handing us, consciously, we can actually map it and help ourselves continue to move forward even through the hardest times. We can go, oh, I see what's happening right now. Shoot, it's an initiation. Okay. And I know the next initiation that after I pass through this one, I know where they're taking me. So I can open my heart to that, give consent to that, and walk knowingly into that next passage.
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely, I think that this flow of indigenous and modern, it's like a weaving that's happening right now. And I think that my personal belief is that the indigenous people have held a lot of the rituals for us, and finally being integrated back in. I'm kind of curious because it's such an interesting word, but the title is Spiritpreneur. Could you tell me what a spiritpreneur is and maybe define a little bit about that? So I've thought of like
Ah,
soulpreneur and
no.
different things like this, but tell me what your definition of that
Well,
is.
we have these words and we don't have all the best words yet for what we're really up to. But I guess I use the word spiritpreneur here because to me there's a palpable lived experience difference between, having a business that's, making mugs and selling mugs and it's pragmatic and it's yeah, it solves a problem. You got to have something to hold your tea into, versus your spirit waking up in your body and saying, okay, it's time to do what we came here to do. And spiritpreneur is like an entrepreneur person, in my experience, who is being guided by a calling that's deeper than the pragmatic fixing of a pragmatic problem. There's something that's coming through them that they're channeling that that is here from more inspired realms. It's spirit wanting to be of service in the body and on the physical world. So a spiritpreneur is somebody who's, really guided by that calling. And usually they're bringing some kind of a healing or a spiritual technology, a healing modality, a wisdom gift to the world. Something that, while it does, hopefully, jeepers, have pragmatic purpose and real life effect and results that land with integrity, it's sourced from something bigger. It's sourced from a spiritual wisdom or truth.
I love that, and I am super curious. I always like to hear stories, as you obviously already know about me. Can you can you share a story or like a client story? Obviously confidentially, but the details of how this has shown up for somebody. How has your system, your work, then brought someone to, okay, I think I'm spiritual, to I'm thriving doing my spirit work, my soul work?
Yeah, I mean, that's most of the people I'm working with in terms of creating business strategy and business plans are like that. So let's see. I just gave a VIP session yesterday to someone who had been an accountant, who had spent most of her life doing accountancy, and in her spare time she was an artist, and so it was her spare time thing, which is how we do it in the modern world now. A lot of times is we carve out a little moment for our deepest soul's work in our spare time while we go to work and make money and be responsible and support our families. And at a certain point, when she reached the age of retirement-ish, her art started really speaking to her, and particularly the spirit of colors themselves. And so it often I find happens for us at the midlife point, where suddenly the deepest work that comes through us starts to wake up and get really loud in us. And that's what happened to her. She started having the colors in her artwork really speak to her as energies. And she found herself being angry, feeling angry when people would talk about, well, the color yellow is joy and the color blue is peace. And she got mad, as if they were stereotyping her dear friends, like, how dare anybody put blue into a box, And so the colors became spirit to her and began really informing her. And then naturally she started sharing that. And then naturally people that she started sharing the way that she works with color started having these tremendous healings of their own creative sense. Well, that's all great, except she wasn't getting paid for it. And now she found her old work of doing accountancy absolutely untenable, like intolerable, because her true spirit path was waking up inside of her. And when it's done, it's done. And so she came to me and we spent a day creating, like unpacking from her what this system really is. What is it that these colors really are? Let's tell the secrets that you've been holding inside. Let's give them words, and let's actually be able to express what this transformative work is. And let's dare to make promises. And this is all speaking to some of this topic that we were talking about today, is like, well, how do you charge money? It's like, you speak to the promises. What happens if people can really get on board with the way that she sees color, and she invokes the power of color, and she reveals the true nature of color as spirit? What happens to them in their real life? Those are the promises of her work. And for those of us who are spiritpreneurs, making those promises can feel scary, because it's like, first of all, to have a spiritpreneur sort of business, you're going to talk about all this crazy stuff that you feel like is almost just your imaginary world. Whoa, that sounds terrifying. What if people make fun of me? What if people don't get it? And there is an art, as we know, as marketers, the art that we love, of finding the right ways and words and language to express these mysteries and meanings in ways that other people can really understand and grok and feel them. And then making promises, like, I'm going to actually tell my clients that if you work with me, you will not only learn to love color, but you'll fall in love with each color, and you'll understand its personality and its deepest gifts. And you'll be able to, romance color in such a way that as it works with you through your own artwork, you're literally romancing the world awake through the power of color. And so just like, it feels, even as I say that out loud, I can feel my clients, even my own lawyer heart going, can you really talk? Are we allowed to talk like that? Are we allowed to say that kind of thing out loud? But the truth is, when we do, with the right energy and the right words, the people that are meant to step into that work with her, with color, they cry when they hear the right words. They cry, and they know, they recognize it in themselves. This is the work. This is aligned for me. This is part of why I came back to the planet. I'm stepping into this work with this person. This is right. And it's at that moment of deep, connection and profound recognition of the truth of what's being shared and spoken, that the whole question of what to charge becomes laughable, because these are priceless. These are priceless services that we spiritpreneurs are bringing, because they are the services, the gifts that our souls incarnated to bring.
That's beautiful. I think one of the, because through our agency, Conscious Marketer, we've represented, some of the biggest spiritual teachers on the planet. And there's always, whenever we launch something, there's always like, how can you charge
Right.
money for this? And my answer, I know I
Yeah.
don't have to answer anymore, but normally there's layers. But it in some ways, it's like, this is the stuff that you should probably be charging the most money more for,
Yeah.
because it's the most important thing on the planet, And and by the way, there's a staff of 10 people and a
Totally.
venue to rent
Yeah.
and things like that too. Well, I just want to shift a little bit. And I know that one of the points you wanted to bring up today was that just sharing that everybody has some kind of channel of genius when they open up their intuitive abilities. And my sense is there's like a range of like some people who are like, yeah, that's not me, never going to have any intuition. And then there's probably like, maybe the other end of the spectrum is like, yeah, I've got it. But I'm kind of curious about that middle point. And my sense is a lot of people have intuitive moments where they get it, and then they either listen to it or don't. And they either are glad they listened to it or regret they didn't listen to it. So it seems that there's something about trust, and how do you develop a deeper trust in your own intuition? So if I was to reframe the question, it would be like, how do you help people to like both deepen, but also like really learn to trust this intuitive ability that is a capacity within us?
Yeah, I do work with a lot of intellectually based people. And a lot of my VIP clients are company founders and people who got where they got, not by being woo-woo, floaty people, but by being overly educated, heady, intellectual, smart folk. And they often show up when their own intuition is starting to percolate and they go, oh, shoot, there's something here. And they come to me sometimes with a hand kind of up going, wait a minute, you're not going to make me one of those crazy woo people, are you? And I was like, of course not. Of course not. So you just want me to trust my intuition? I say, no, of course not. What? No, I want you to test it like you would anything. Because I'm still half lawyer, Some part of me still wonders how the heck the work I do works. Every time I give a big session, there's some part of me that's going, nah, this can't possibly work again. This can't possibly work. And so these are pragmatic tools. Our intuitive gifts, our embodied intuition, our creative intuition, our integrative intuition, our visionary intuition, because there's 4 types, then I just kind of rattled them off there. But these are pragmatic tools to use in a good life. They're not something that we hand our power over to. They're not something that we just go, well, I guess I had a feeling, so I have to follow my feeling. It's just another sense to take in along with our brilliant mind, what our mind says, along with what the world is saying, along with everything else. So what I can say, though, is that while all of us have intrinsic inner guidance of some kind, whether you want to call it a gut feeling, or a sensation, or whatever you want to call those intrinsic intuitive nudges, we all also have old traumas and difficult childhoods or things that have now kind of mucked up the hose. Like I like to say, our best ideas happen when we feel really open and relaxed. And then that intuitive power just, it's so easy. The great idea just arrives when you're laying on a beach on vacation, right? The big solution just descends when you're standing under the warm shower head, pouring water on your shoulders. So the question is, how do we clear the way so that those brilliant moments of effortless, natural, aligned, intuitive knowing can happen more often? And then it's the proof is in the pudding. It's not like, oh, whatever you sense must be true. No, test it out. Try it out. You're a responsible human. So, gosh, every time I seem to follow this feeling, it always leads to an open parking space. It's like the proof is in the pudding. Go ahead and have both. Have the best of both worlds. The wonderful peak experience feeling, but also the best parking spot at Costco. Like, let's have both.
I definitely want the best
Right.
parking spot. That's no lie. I'm like, hello. Oh my gosh. So you talked a little bit about, actually before we jumped on this call, about how this is really what we need right now. We need people to be able to channel that genius now. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's your experience of that? Why? All the things?
Well, it's like, check it out. Sometimes we have a tendency to look around at this world and go, oh, crap, the world's on fire. There's more division than ever. People are growing uncivil with one another. There's so many kind of crappy looking things happening that many of us who are paying attention are saying, what the heck, is this looks bad. And yet when we tune in, there's something deeply exciting about what's happening. And I believe, and this is something that Maria Yesbrew, my teacher, and I talk about sometimes, like, dude, we won the lottery to be here at this time. Our souls are so excited to be here right now when everything is changing so fast and the proverbial poo is hitting the fan. And everybody is waking up with a longing for what truly matters and what's bigger and what's more loving. and what will give our grandchildren a lifestyle that we want to give them. And there's this big longing waking up in the world. And so I feel that as a mirror for what I'm seeing among my clients who are leaders in, as entrepreneurs or as professional leaders, that longing is waking us up. It's lighting a fire under our collective tuchus to do what our soul came here to do. There's no time to wait now, and there's nothing to lose now. It's time. It's time. It's time. There's no need to be treading water or to sitting on the edge of the bed for some sign. The world's on fire. That's your sign. Get to work. And with that, I think, comes an expansive soul, an expansive yes, to finally being willing to look at what am I really here to do? And how can I do it in a way that I can feel integrous, responsible, and proud of?
I loved all that, and I think I could just sit here and listen to you all day. So I have to fly up there over to you and study with you and take your courses and stuff. I'm like super excited. Thank you for sharing that vision. I mean, I think it's so important in our world today that we all step into that purpose and ask those questions.
This is it.
Because there's nobody else is going to do it. We have to kind of show up, So if people want to go deeper with you, Mellissa, if they want to study with you, can you maybe share how they
that's
can
kind of
get
the
in
first
touch with you? And I know you also have a quiz.
Yeah, that's the first step
that can help people.
That I invite people to take to step into this learning with me is to take the Soul Gift Quiz, SOUL Gift Quiz, because it is a journey. This spiral path is a journey. And the first step that we often need to take as adults is to discover or rediscover what our real gift is that we came here to bring the world. And in just 2 minutes, this little quiz will nail you and reflect something for you that is very rarely acknowledged. And it, for many, ends up being a big aha. Oh, I have this soul gift, but my whole life I've been trained to try and give this one over here. And now it's time for all of us, as the first step on opening into this new path, to identify what are you really here for and to focus there. And so when you take the Soul Gift Quiz, you'll learn what your primary soul gift is in 2 minutes and 7 little questions. And then if you want to give me your email, it's your choice. But if you want to give me your email, we'll be in touch and I'll teach you more about your type and what does that mean? And then what are the next steps to learn about? And you can email me back at any time and we can be in conversation. Yeah, because I do help people with a lot of different things, from developing their intuitive genius for professionals, especially creative professionals, to doing business strategy work for those people who know that they have this soul's calling and need to make sure that they're creating the absolute perfect right fit business for them and their soul and their gifts. So there's a whole range of stuff we can play with together.
Thank you so much for being here and being present and sharing your gifts with us. It's an honor, Mellissa, and thanks to all the listeners who've tuned in today. And again, it's soulgiftquiz.com, and you can also go to Melissa's other URL, channelyourgenius.com as well, and learn more about Melissa's work. If you want to get the show notes for today's show, you can get those at consciousmarketer.com/podcast, and you can download the episode and listen to it. Thank you, Mellissa, so much for being on our podcast today and for showing up here today.